Hello, guys, and thank you so much for joining us for another episode of the Enneagram Pod. You know me, I'm Krista Harden, and I'm so excited to get to walk with you through whatever stresses you have today. We are talking on Monday, September 11th. I'm taking a moment here with you to pause and reflect on 9/11 in my country here, USA. Many of you live here too. Let's take a moment to think about that world tragedy, really, and just reflect for a second. Okay. Well, I hope we actually take a little more time than that to reflect, but even here together, to take a breath, take a pause, remember where you were. And also, if you're pouring into the next gen, taking a moment to talk to them about it too. That's what we're all about here on today's pod is really making sure we pour into the next generation well. I am so delighted and excited we get to talk to Dr. Morgan Cutlip. She is one of my dear friends. She is a psychologist. She's a book author and actually author of a two-book deal. We are so grateful to have her book. I have it right here in my hands if you're watching on YouTube. Love Your Kids Without Losing Yourself. Dr. Cutlip has been on our pod before. She references the glow guides in her book, actually, guys. She's been on Good Morning America. She has been in so many magazines. She's a prolific nine. And today we get to hear from her on such an important topic of how do you pour into the next gen without losing yourself. So we're talking today about the guilt and the overwhelmness of parenting, but giving you some hacks and some deep dives for that too. So whatever generation you are, yes, we know parenting goes on and on and on. So even if you have a lot older kids, this episode is for you because we can actually ascertain, and I saw this stat in Dr. Morgan's book. I won't give everything away, but 95% of people deal with that supposed mom guilt. And of course, we know dads are in there too. So she's going to help us to get regulated. She's going to help us to talk through the ways our kids can get regulated. And Wes and I actually got to use one of the hacks on our way to church today because our daughter, our nine, was dysregulated from a lot going on in her life. And she just had a hard start to her day. And she's like, I wish I had time for coffee, but I don't. And we were talking about Dr. Morgan's book, and I was explaining to Wes how she encourages us to go deep with our kids and to really get to know them on such a deep level. And it was so perfectly timed because I said, Wes, you turned right instead of left for church. And I was so sweet. I was like, oh, just a wrong turn? No, Piggy. Like, knowing we're probably going to be late. And he's like, actually, I wanted to go get Melody that coffee. And her countenance changed so much. So, this is just one small practical nuance tip from Dr. Morgan as she shares that. I just want to let you know it was so life giving to our family today already. And I've enjoyed other tips from her book too. So, so many for the taking. Let's just talk to her though. Let's just get cozy together as we discover what we can do for parenting the best ways possible without losing ourselves. And then I want to let you know her book is in the show notes and you can make sure you get it on pre-order for just a little tiny bit longer. She has awesome pre-order bonuses and I've got mine there too. So you can get them together. I just love her work so much. And I focus more on marriage, but we all know parenting is a huge part of marriage. So excited for you to talk with my dear friend here. Let's meet her. Dr. Morgan, we are so happy to have you back on the Enneagram and Marriage Pod. Thank you so much.
Thank you for having me. It's so great to be here.
Oh my gosh, we are so thrilled and excited for you stepping out bigger, broader into the world in your nine space. Everyone here is cheering for you. Congratulations on your new book. Tell us about yourself and what you've been up to lately for those who are new to hearing you or for those who just want that catch up.
Thank you. Okay, well, where do I begin? So, for those who don't know me, my name's Dr. Morgan Cutlip, and I have my doctorate in psychology, but I've been in the field of relationships for over 15 years now,
Mm.
and used to work alongside my dad for about 12 years or so. And he's in the same field, and he was like writing courses before it was the cool thing to do. And
Right.
so I grew up um, just alongside him in that world of taking psychological concepts, research and theory, and translating them into practical tools. And so that's my specialty. Long time ago, probably when I was in college, I was in the car with my dad and I was like, someday I want to help women.
Mm.
I don't know how, but that's what I want to do. fast forward to our daughter being born, Effie. I don't know what she is yet on Enneagram, but I think it would
Yeah.
be helpful to me to know. But she just, I don't even know if she was a difficult baby or not, but she felt difficult to
Yeah.
me. And I just was really caught off guard by how hard motherhood felt for me, how overwhelmed I was, how much frustration and resentment I developed toward my husband rather quickly.
Yeah.
And I knew then I was like, someday I'm going to come out of this, this fog, and I want to help moms navigate this better. And so that's what I do now, and that's what I've been up to is helping moms, because I am one. So I have two kids, Effie who's 10, Roy who's 7.
Mm.
They're family names and they're not short for anything. That's what everyone always asks
Oh,
me.
yeah.
And
Oh, so
um,
cute.
been married for 15 years this month to my high school sweetheart, whose name is Chad. He's a
Aw.
3,
Uh-huh.
and we were not together that entire time. We broke up for a very long time, but reconnected. And so, trying to give you all the highlights. And we live in California, but I'm from Ohio. And what I've been up to is writing my book, and now trying to do my best to
Mm.
market and advertise and talk
Yes.
about it as much as possible, because it's just
Oh.
a message so close to my heart.
Yes, and you just came on our pod at the perfect timing again because last time you were talking about your glow pairing and your 3-9, and we're already getting some updates about that. You guys are in the throes of parenting with kids in these middle grade years, and you are
Yes.
writing a book and getting a bit more traction to do that as you've been figuring things out. Now I'm super curious as to what you're figuring out, so you can help us. But I also love just hearing that as we talk this whole month about seasons of life and marriage
Mhm.
and parenting that you are right here with us and
Mhm.
helping us along. You have such a big following. You've talked about this on Good Morning America. I have your book right here. I'm so excited for those watching on YouTube. It is a gorgeous cover. You have to come
Thank
watch this or
you.
go to her page. This is phenomenal. Did you envision this kind of beautiful pink and orange cover?
I actually designed my cover.
You did?
Yeah, I did.
Oh,
It was like, I mean, I don't want to get too into it, but it was,
beautiful.
we just could not figure out like the right look, and everything that came across my email was like, this doesn't feel right. And it was kind of like down to the wire where it was going to delay publication date. And I had been looking at books from the 70s. And I really
Interesting.
like their colors. I was looking up
Yeah.
color schemes from the
Mm.
70s, and that's where the pink and orange came from. And then there's a book called, I don't remember, it's like Self, Other, and I, or something like that. And I was like, oh, Venn diagrams would be perfect. But I'm seeing more books come out with Venn diagrams lately, and I'm like, oh gosh, I guess there was like a movement for Venn diagrams.
Yes. And
But
I
yeah,
think
I'm
that
really
it's
happy with it.
I think it's just only going to keep going
I think so
because
too.
you're really learning. I guess, like you're ahead of the game. I think 3s, 6s, and 9s often set the tone for us culturally. And I
Mm,
think that you're moving in that space to
yeah.
realize like you and your kids are, you want to have your own identities, but there has to be, and I know I'm going to be asking you about this on this very
Mhm.
pod, but like there's a sense of connection. And when you see
Yeah.
her cover, you're going to see that that's represented beautifully, that we have our
Mhm.
own entities but that we also are truly shaping one another, aren't we?
Yes. Oh, I love that you said that and that you're noticing that. Yeah, I have a whole section in my book about how the mother child relationship is mutually beneficial, because I think
Mm.
that there is this belief sometimes, not everywhere, but there's this belief, especially I can see it on social a lot, that motherhood takes more than it gives.
Mm.
And we're sort of missing this piece where, that's not actually true. That's not true when we look at even scientific research about what
Mm.
pregnancy does in like fetal cells that are left over in our body, what it does to our body, and how it helps, heal from disease and repair and things like that. But psychologically is where my expertise is. And
Yeah.
having children requires us to, if we're doing our jobs as parents, requires us to reflect on ourselves,
Mm.
see areas that need growth, and to change and to grow and to develop to become better than we would be on our own. And as we become better, our children become better, and as they need us to become better, we step up. And it's this beautiful
Yeah.
give and take where we're really helping each other develop and grow. And I say motherhood is expansive. I know our world constricts for
Mm.
a little bit after we become moms. We have this like loss of
True.
freedom. Holy moly, the loss of freedom is
Yeah.
intense. But
Yeah.
eventually, motherhood is really meant to be expansive, and I think it's an important perspective that
Mm.
we lose sometimes.
Yeah. That's a really good reminder for everybody who's going, "This has been a long, hard summer. I'm
Yes.
ready for these kids. I'm glad they're back in school." But, like, also when you reflect back, you're like, "I miss it a little bit." I'm thinking
Totally.
back on all those lazy days when we were bored together or frustrated together, even just the word together. And so you're reminding us of the oxytocin and the wonderful bonding. And even just like you said, what we get from parenting is the greatest gift. I know many of us feel like that's been the best title we
Yeah.
could ever have. And so, those who want to be parents, those who are parents, you're teaching us. I love how your book is titled Love Your Kids Without Losing Yourself, because we love to nurture here, of course, relationships, but also knowing that foundational is making sure you're taking care of you. So, tell us how the book was born. You already gave us a little bit of that idea at the intro, but can you tell us a little bit more about like what made you feel like this was the right timing for this book in your life?
Yes. I'm glad you called out the title too, because it was really important that the title capture what I think is like the deepest desire of parents and specifically moms, which is that we really want to be good moms.
Mm,
Also, we want to feel good in motherhood. And I think we feel like they're like two separate things. You can't have both. And so I wanted the title to really capture that there's
mm.
a way to have both. So okay, the
Yeah.
timing is basically, I've been piddling away at this book for probably, I don't even know now. I can't do the math, 6, 7 years. I would like go to the library sometimes on the weekend and work on my outline and my
Mm.
chapter titles and just kind of putting it together. And a few years ago, book writing is a long process, by the way,
Yeah.
but a few years
Yes,
ago,
it is.
right? I know you know.
Yeah.
I just like sat down with my husband and I was like, I just want to write my book. Like, this is the thing I've
Mm.
always wanted to do. This was like, I don't think I started a social media account with really any goal in mind, but if I had to name one, it would be I want to write a book. And I was like, I just don't think
Mhm.
there's ever going to be a good time. And so I'm going to do it now. And he's like, let's do it. And so we talked about, what that will look like, kind of like vaguely, because I didn't even know if I could make this happen. And so I took my really terrible outline. It was not very good or polished, and I submitted it to some agents
Mhm.
and set up meetings. And within, I think, a week, I had secured an agent and was working on my proposal. And then several months later, submitting to publishers. And like I just, I say in the book at one point, and I say this a lot on social, like sometimes we have to act before we feel. I
Mm.
didn't feel ready, but I had it's like if I was waiting to feel ready, it would never happen.
Yeah.
And
Oh,
so I just
wow.
acted and
Huge.
the feelings followed. And
Mm.
I'm really
Mhm.
glad that I did because
Me.
now it's done.
Oh, that must feel so amazing. But you get to pause and just celebrate that and share with us for those out there who also have a big project that if they just go ahead and take some steps and then rest and then take a few more steps, they can do this. And I noticed that theme in your book as well. What do you feel like is something that was really a passion for you when you were speaking to your reader, to that avatar who you knew loves your so maybe they don't even know your social media, but desperately needs help with parenting? What's something you hope that they get from this book and that you truly created it for?
Oh, I've not been asked that question
Oh,
before.
good.
I think it's like lots of things. I think one thing is I want them to feel really um like understood. I think there's power in consuming content, reading a book, watching a reel or a movie, and you're like, oh, I get like that's what it's like for me. And I remember talking with my agent as we were putting together the proposal, and she's like, what do you want the tone of your book to be? And I said, I want it to be like where, you're having coffee with a friend who's credentialed. Like, so it's like a nice mix of the two. And early feedback so far has been like, wow, I feel really seen. And so I feel like that's a win because that's something I was really hoping moms would experience when they read my book. I think another thing is um, I want them to feel like they leave the book with tangible tools.
Mm.
I have read a lot of beautiful, really well written, wonderful books in the motherhood sphere, and I have left a lot of them feeling kind of frustrated
Mm. Mm.
and almost like pumped up, but with nowhere to put my energy, you
Isn't that
know,
true? Yes.
where it's like, I'm like, okay, so society is messed up for moms, or, there's no support for us, or the structures need to change. And I'm like, okay, but how do I feel better now? I can't change if I can't change society in this moment, or I can't change the patriarchy or whatever it
Yeah.
might be. If
Right.
I can't do that right now, like what am I supposed to do? And
Yeah.
so I wanted a book where moms read it and they feel seen and understood, but they don't necessarily feel riled up to the point where they're helpless or hopeless, but rather they're empowered to
Yeah.
leave the book feeling like, I know what I can do in this moment to make
Mm.
changes that will help me feel better. And I'm
Mm.
a believer that, when we make there's two ways to incite change in the
Mhm.
world, top down and bottom up. And
Yeah.
when we make changes at home and in how we relate to our family and our children and our partners, that inevitably that will lead to more systemic change. So I think it
Mm.
works. It works that way too.
I do too. And I think that that's neat that you're reminding everyone listening, like when you make these changes for yourself and that we are going to just, it'll trickle into our families and that will trickle into all of the places that we serve. And you're a great example of that because you're somebody who works hard and you notice things that aren't right in the system as a nine, as a justice type. You also have a very thoughtful character. Your book is, as soon as I picked it up, I'm like, oh, it's all about without losing yourself. Like, that's beautiful because we're helping people not to have guilt, beating burnout, and allowing them to walk in their own giftings too. So thank you for giving moms that voice.
Well, actually, what you're saying is reminding me a little bit of, or a lot actually, of my chapter on commitment. So
Mm,
there's 5 steps that I walk moms through, and the takeaway really of the book is teaching moms how to mother themselves like they mother their kids. So the idea is, moms are the master managers of all the people and all the things, but we don't turn these same skill sets toward ourselves very much. And so the idea is that we get really good at managing our relationship with ourselves. So what we do for our children, we also do for us. The short version is to go mom yourself.
I love that
And
phrase
that's
in your
like
book. Yes.
that's like the call to action. And
So good.
it's reminding you to like regularly do this sort of self check-in so you
Mm,
can tune into you and see what you need. But one of the core of the book in the midsection walk through these 5 steps, and one of them is commit wisely.
mm,
And what you're saying is reminding me of that. And part of that section, not the whole thing, but part of it is about prioritizing.
mm,
And the takeaway is we have to learn from that section is we have to learn how to prioritize our lives in a way that we can feel at peace with,
mm,
because it's like I can't, there's no prescription. You can't be prescriptive in a book and telling somebody how to prioritize, because I don't know people's circumstances or life or values or what brings you meaning and fulfillment and all of these things. And I think it's important for moms to know whether you are a stay-at-home mom and that's where you put all your priority and that's how you do things, that's absolutely okay. It's about what feels good to you, what feels at peace to you, what's aligned for you with what you value and what's important to you.
mm,
Or
mhm,
if you are like, I'm not my best self when I am all about everyone and everything else, I have to have some priority in there for something that brings me a lot of meaning. That's part of my story. Like this work fulfills me. It's like it would feel. I would feel some resentment if I didn't have an opportunity to do
mm,
what I do, and so we have to
mhm,
get in touch with these things. And the different chapters walk you through like how do you get to know yourself. We change a lot
mhm,
after becoming a mom, and sometimes yeah we feel misaligned, and so being in the
mm,
know with yourself helps you recognize your priorities and how we can arrange them. And I give tangible tools for how to do that in a way that feels good to us.
mhm,
Yeah, and you can
mhm.
live with.
I love that, and it really just it's encouraging because it's a parenting book that also includes the parent, and
Yes.
I feel like this about marriage too, that there's not many marriage books that include how to take care of yourself, and I think that that's huge that you included this,
Mm-hmm.
because I just my friend and I were talking about, homeschooling, and she's actually a 9, and we both homeschool. You don't hear me talk about that a lot on this podcast, but that's because I need other things, and, she goes, I just can't on the homeschooling anymore. And she's got 6 kids and she's like, 3 are
Oh,
done. I'm on my second generation, the next 3. And she's like, I can't. And we were both like, we're not talking about that. We don't talk about that. And so
yes.
I think that that's like so refreshing for me to be able to
Yeah.
hear you say, like, I am giving active tips for parenting, but like I'm also aware that you're going to be nuanced and you need to be uplifted, recharged, figure out who you are so that you can model that because kids should only be kids for a little while. And then they need to know like what's it like for the next, apparently, if they're blessed to have 60 years or so. A lot of people are getting that
Yes.
these days. So it's really cool that you're attending and attuning to your audience here as adults. Like you matter too.
Yeah, I mean, that's like really the focus. So every chapter in this 5 steps first applies the step toward your relationship with your kids because I think that as moms especially, it's like we identify with that most
Yeah.
easily. So it's like if we're going to give a concept, apply it to the kids and we're like, "Oh yeah, we got this."
Mhm.
And then it's applied toward yourself because
Mhm.
you'll pick up some parenting advice throughout the book, but like it's really a
Mhm.
book about the parent. It's
Oh,
really a book for moms. It's really a book about you already are likely, especially if you buy this book, you're probably already a mom who's doing a really good job. But how are you
mhm.
doing? And I think
Yeah.
one of
Ooh,
the
that was a good one. Yeah.
yeah, like how are you? And I think something that is like lost among the cliches, like put your oxygen mask on first, or you can't pour from an empty cup. Something that's lost from those, because I think we're sort of tired of that, need to really recognize is that we a lot of times will give all of ourselves for the sake of our relationships. It's like,
Mhm.
oh, well, I'm self-sacrificing for the preservation of my children's relationship or with my relationship with my partner. I'm giving everything to them. And in the process of giving everything to them, when we back burner ourselves for so long, we
Mhm.
ultimately end up burnt out, bitter,
Mhm.
resentful,
Mhm.
overwhelmed, stressed out, highly anxious. So we show up to the relationships that matter most to us as like a pretty terrible version of ourselves. And so we're
Mhm.
sacrificing for the relationships and just end up showing up not so great
Terribly.
in the relationships. And so we have to kind of like recognize that this
Mm.
exists and
So
because
true.
to help battle that worry that we're being selfish or things like that. And it's like it's backfiring. If you want to be the best parent, the best partner, you do have to make sure you're considered when you arrange your priorities of life.
Oh my gosh, thank you. I needed to hear that today because I had so many things this morning and then I had two teenagers with different moods. And I was
Ugh,
like, okay, first teenager's mood was hard, but I'm breathing through it. We're working out together. We're at Pure Bar. We're doing all of our things. And then I'm like, okay, sounds good. And then now taking the next teenager to her camp. And then she got in the car and was a mood. And I was like, oh no. I was just like, no, you're not. I'm done. I am overstimulated. I'm like,
yes.
doing my best here to not get dysregulated. And I wanted to cry, and I'm not a crier, but I was like, I want to cry right now because I'm working so hard for all of you. Now, I said it to my child. She absorbed it very quickly. This was my 9 precious girl. And she's just like, okay, mom. And she's
I
like,
gotcha.
we're both a little dysregulated, but you know what? We're going to make it. And I'm like, we are. But like, I was human in that moment. And there's a bit of a
Yes.
guilt that comes there because you're like, I shouldn't be human. I shouldn't have had any human feelings. I should have just been able to buck it up. But it's like if you're in these environments all day with kids, there's a sense of like, I am human and I do have to matter. Or like you heard me say, I'm going to start to spill over. So I
Yes.
felt like that was so cool in your book too. Like I haven't gotten to fully delve in because it's brand new right now. But
Yes.
what I've already seen and I love is that you do share personal stories. I remember the one about you doing dishes with your husband and you're like, I need to be able to put the dishes down so I don't just feel like I'm 24/7 doing all these chores.
Yes. Yeah. I think that I'm glad that came through. I wanted like a real humanness quality to the book. I share a lot of
Yeah, I
hard
love
moments
it.
of my own mothering experience, but I think what you're saying is so relatable. I the other day actually, so this is an example, and this is like a very basic one. The book goes more like in depth and more creative ways of
Mhm.
mothering yourself, like you mother your kids. But the other day, the kids are just like being kind of antsy
Yeah.
and kind of at each other's throats a little bit more. And I was like, okay, I need to tune into what they need, right? Because this is
Yeah.
what we do as
Yeah.
women,
Yeah.
especially and moms, is like we're really good at
Yeah.
intuiting other people's needs.
Yeah.
So, what did my kids need? My kids needed to get outside.
Mhm.
My kids needed to hang out with some friends. They needed to not be just each other's entertainment. And
Mhm.
so I planned a beach day with some friends the next day and I like got everything situated. And then I knew if we were doing that, we'd be there all day. I would spend most of the morning making food, packing snacks, getting the beach stuff ready. And so, usually, in like past life for me as a
Yeah.
mom, that's what I would do. I would just roll right into that day, get up. My whole morning would be all about getting ready to go and all of these things. And then by the end of the day, I'd be so worn down and tired because going to the beach is a whole lot of
Yes.
work with kids that
Mhm.
I would eventually hit a point of dysregulation. It would just be inevitable.
Yeah.
And instead, I took a moment and thought, okay, if I'm going to devote a whole day to meeting my kids' needs, what
Mhm.
do I need first to sort of give me some buffer or
Yeah.
some padding? And that day it happened to be like I need to lift some weights or something. I needed to do heavy lifting
Mhm.
to feel more equipped to handle the day. And I was able to show up a much calmer,
Oh.
better version of me because I did exactly for myself what I had done for them. I tuned in. What do I need?
Mm.
How can I make that need happen?
Wow. Oh, that is delicious. This is music to my ears, and I think everybody here now I'm like, "Oh my gosh," like, I'm ready for this book because I think we're a and I think this is gonna be a book for us to get and re-get off of our shelves because
I
as we're
hope
talking
so.
all month long, like, seasons come and go and change, and I think I had the last season down, and now that I have 2 in
Mm,
full mood, not just the one I was just learning how to handle one teenager with a mood, and now the second one is getting one, and then the third one is almost there, so I'm like, "I need your book to help me to get regulated," and I also noticed how you have mantras and
mhm.
spaces where we cannot sabotage ourselves, and I do really appreciate that there's practical steps because I love the deep dives, but I'm also Gen X, and I need my practical hacks, so thank
Yes.
you for both of those.
Yes, and you know what? You're touching on the very so my first chapter, or it's like the intro, but I titled it to trick people to read it because you have to read the first part. I feel like
Yeah,
I always skip intros, so I was like
I
cautious
do
about
that
that.
sometimes.
But it's called Balance is Baloney, and I feel like that's what you're speaking to, and which is this idea that that there aren't seasons. For some reason, like we'll say things like that. There's just a season, which implies that it changes and it comes and goes. But a lot of times we're really trying to seek balance in our life. How do I turn the right dials? How do I finally reach that resting state that's balance in my relationships, in my life, in my work life balance? All these different areas we're always sort of after this idea of balance. And so I start the book by saying, that's a myth. Don't try to reach balance anymore because it's not obtainable. Because you can reach a cruising altitude at some point, you'll get there, but then there's going to be some turbulence that comes along the way and you're going to be thrown off your path. And when we think we can achieve balance and then we
Mhm.
fall out of balance, we feel like we're doing something wrong, or we're just taking on a whole lot of like stuff to try to get to balance. And I'm like, take it off your plate. Don't
Mm.
feel bad when you fall short of reaching balance because it's actually not possible.
Yeah.
And instead, we need to embrace this idea of balancing, of getting in this practice, of tuning those dials and checking in. And just like you're saying,
Mm.
like, I figured out last season, but I don't know what's going on in this season. It's like, that's normal. That's just kind of how it goes. And when we can anticipate it, doesn't
Mhm.
hit so hard.
You're inviting us into a little bit less of that critical parent on us, right? If we had any of us listening had a critical parent, which I know I did, even though
Mm,
well meaning and loving, it's like
totally.
that part of you is in there. Your parents talk to you is sometimes your inner dialogue. And so there's
Hmm.
this part of us that's like shaming ourselves, like, you should have had this, you should have seen it coming. And instead, you're inviting us into no, life is messy. When it
Yeah.
comes and you have to look at the puzzle pieces strewn around a bit now, like, here are some ways that you can step back in with care. And so that's why I'm
Yes.
just eager to jump in with you. Thank you for taking on this brave journey because I know it's going to be a book you probably keep getting out at each season and that we all do that.
I hope so. It's designed that way. It's like read it once, but keep coming back to it if you need it. So,
Yeah, I do need it. So thank you. Yes, tell our
Oh.
listeners and me how we can get a hold of everything that you're doing so we can make sure we're up to date.
So, my book is available for pre-order now. It comes out September 19th. But when you pre-order, and as you well know, people will be hearing from you soon, you get
Yep.
special gifts.
Yes.
And so, one that I'm excited about is that I actually recorded. I do the audio in my book, but I
Oh,
recorded earlier the intro and first two chapters so that you can start listening immediately. So you'll get those right away when you pre-order. You can at least start on the book as you're waiting for it to come out. Um, and you can buy it anywhere you buy books, Amazon, Barnes and Noble, Target, and through my website also, because that's where you'll get your free gifts. So it's drmorgancutlip.com/book. And then my Instagram is the same handle, which is drmorgancutlip.
awesome. Thank
Yes,
you. We are
of
so
course.
grateful, so excited for you on this journey of sharing your voice and helping us all to find that peace and to be seen, even as we're parenting and trying to love others. You're like, you guys are important too. So thank you for telling us
Oh,
that. We needed to hear that.
thank you for having me.
Yes. Okay, so glad you got to meet with Dr. Morgan and I. Don't forget her book. I have it right here. Love Your Kids Without Losing Yourself. Make sure you grab it. Grab her bonuses. Grab the E&M bonuses. We are here for it all with you guys. I am so grateful we got to learn. And hopefully you can just take a nice deep breath and feel a little less guilty. If you're anything like me, you're running off to see Big Fat Greek Wedding 3, hopefully with some laughs in the middle of your very busy week. You need those rewards so you can keep going strong. All right, talk to you soon. Bye-bye.